Picture this. It's 1911, and a young explorer is just hacking his way through the dense, sweltering cloud forests of the Peruvian Andes.
Oh, and he's fighting brutal altitude sickness the entire time.
Exactly. He's scrambling up these terrifying primitive wooden ladders, and at certain points he's literally holding onto the sheer cliff face by his fingernails.
With like a 2,000-foot drop right into the Urubamba Canyon below him.
Right. And the wildest part is that he is risking his life purely based on a rumor.
Yeah, just a whisper from a local guide about some ruined city hidden up in the peaks.
So he's exhausted, his team is completely miserable, and he is starting to think this is just a massive waste of time.
Which is completely fair, honestly.
But then he pushes his way through this thicket of tropical undergrowth, and suddenly he just finds himself standing in the middle of a sprawling stone maze.
He's looking at brilliant, perfectly fitted white granite blocks.
Yeah, and terraces that seem to just hang in the clouds. I mean, he had stumbled upon Machu Picchu.
It is an almost impossible image. Just an entire royal estate lying abandoned and hidden for nearly 4 centuries, sitting silently on top of a craggy, inaccessible peak.
It's unbelievable. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. We have a massive stack of sources for me today, ranging from YouTube historical documentaries to incredibly detailed cultural texts.
All centered on the Andean people and the mighty Inca Empire.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because this deep dive is not just a standard history lesson about a conquered people.
No, not at all.
This is a masterclass in human adaptation. Our mission today is to figure out how a civilization managed to build the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas without the wheel, without iron, without a written alphabet.
And of course, to uncover the deeply resilient legacy they left behind.
Right, so to even begin to understand the Inca, we have to look at the brutal landscape that forged them.
You really do. They lived in the Andes Mountains, which is the longest continental mountain range in the world. And it sits right on the Pacific Ring of Fire.
Which means earthquakes.
Tons of them. They were building a civilization in an incredibly active seismic zone, constantly threatened by massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions.
The geography alone feels like it actively wants to reject human settlement.
It really does. I mean, look at the borders of this empire. To the east, you have the Amazon rainforest.
Which the Inca actually called Rupa Rupa, right?
Right, hot. They largely avoided it. It was just a sweltering, impenetrable jungle. And then to the west, you have the Atacama Desert.
Oh, that place is intense.
It is the driest place on Earth.
Yeah.
It is so utterly barren and rocky that today, scientists literally use it to test Mars rovers.
Wait, really? Mars rovers?
Yeah, because it's the closest physical match we have to the Martian surface. There are weather stations in the Atacama that have never recorded a single drop of rain.
That is just wild. And yet, despite those extremes, the sources point out that people have lived in this environment for over 10,000 years.
Right.
Like early Andean cultures, the Kuril Supe, they were building complex societies at the exact same time the ancient Egyptians were building pyramids.
Exactly. And because they were sandwiched between the mountains and the desert, they were surviving mostly on marine life.
Like sardines from the cold Humboldt Current.
Right, which represents a completely independent genesis of human civilization. They had absolutely no contact with the outside world to borrow ideas from.
Okay, I have to frame this in a way that makes sense to me because it's just staggering. If you're playing like a civilization building video game, you rely on a standard tech tree to build an empire.
Right, the usual progression.
Yeah, you unlock draft animals to pull your plows, you unlock carts with wheels to move your food, and you unlock a written language to manage your taxes.
Sure.
The Andean people were essentially playing this game on expert mode with half the technology tree permanently locked.
It's a great analogy. Early on, they didn't even have ceramics. They were using hollowed-out gourds.
And you mentioned draft animals before. Their only pack animal was the llama.
The llama is a wonderful creature, but it is definitely not an ox.
Right. A llama can carry maybe 100 pounds tops, and it absolutely refuses to be a draft animal. It will not pull a plow.
No, if you overload a llama, it just sits down, spits, and refuses to move.
So how on earth do you feed a rapidly expanding empire when you have no plows, no wheels to transport grain, and practically zero flat, fertile land?
Well, you don't build horizontally, you build vertically. The answer was a system we call the vertical archipelago.
The vertical archipelago. I love that.
Yeah, because the Andes change elevation so drastically over very short distances, the Andean people realized they didn't need to conquer vast, flat plains to find different climates. They just moved up and down the mountain slopes.
I want you listening to imagine stepping out of your front door right now. But instead of having to drive 3 states over to find a different climate to grow a different crop, you just walk a few miles up or down a mountain to access completely different agricultural biomes.
That's exactly how it functioned. Down at the base of the mountains, it's warm and humid, so communities would grow fruit and chilies in the Yunga zone.
And then you hike a bit higher?
You hike up to a temperate zone, the Dichua zone, and you can grow maize and cotton. Higher still, in the colder Sunni air, it's perfect for cultivating potatoes.
And at the very top.
Up in the Puna, the freezing, treeless zone where nothing grows, you have the perfect environment for grazing herds of alpacas and llamas. By organizing vertically, a single community could guarantee itself a complete, balanced diet just by hiking.
But surviving that kind of vertical leap requires more than just clever farming. You can't survive that environment alone.
No, definitely not.
It forces a totally different social structure.
It absolutely does. Which brings us to the beating heart of Andean society. It's a concept called Ayeni.
Ayeni, sacred reciprocity.
Right. It's the core philosophy of today for you, tomorrow for me. There was no money in this society and no real concept of private property for the average person.
Society was just organized into communal extended family groups, right? The Ailu.
Exactly, the Ailu.
Yeah.
They shared everything.
And the way that communal mindset shaped their view of the individual is fascinating. They didn't measure a human life by chronological age.
No, they measured it by physical capacity and your utility to the community. They broke the human lifespan down into distinct stages based on what you could actually contribute.
So infancy was viewed as a seed phase, right? The wawa.
Right, the wawa. You weren't even officially considered part of the community until you survived your first few years.
Yeah.
They had a first haircut ceremony called Rutuchiku around age 2 to mark joining the community.
And then as you grew up?
You entered the Waina, the golden age of youth, roughly 18 to 25. You became the heavy laborer, the soldier. You provided the physical muscle that kept the community alive.
But what I find so beautiful is what happened when that physical strength faded. Instead of being cast aside as a broken tool, you transitioned into an elder, the machu.
Yes, your role literally shifted from muscle to mind.
You were no longer expected to carry stones or fight. Instead, you became a respected advisor. Because you were nearing the end of your life, society viewed you as being closer to the spirit world.
You existed to pass down wisdom to the next generation of seeds. Valuing every life stage like that wasn't just poetic, it was the engine of their state economy.
Specifically, a system called the Mida, right?
Exactly. The Mida was a mandatory labor tax. Since they didn't have currency, citizens paid their taxes through physical work.
It's almost like a modern combination of universal basic income and mandatory military service.
That's a great way to put it.
Imagine if, instead of paying income tax out of your paycheck, you owed the government 2 months of manual labor a year. Like maybe building a highway, or farming state lands, or fighting in the army.
But in exchange, the state provided complete social security from massive storehouses. If your region suffered a drought, the state fed you. They housed you, they clothed you.
And organizing a centrally planned economy of that scale requires massive amounts of data.
What's fascinating here is how they tracked all of this without a written language.
Right. It is mind-boggling. To track the middle labor, the census, the food stores, they used krupus.
Yes, kupus.
How does that even work? I mean, how do you run the logistics of an empire with string?
It was a highly sophisticated mathematical tool. A quipu consists of a main primary cord with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of pendant cords hanging off it.
Okay.
They used a base 10 positional system, very similar to how we use decimals today. The type of knot represented the number, and its physical position on the string represented ones, tens, hundreds, or thousands.
Wait, they even had a way to tie a knot for 0, didn't they?
They did. An empty space or a specific knot represented 0.
So it's literally a textile computer, and the color of the string told you what you were counting, right?
Exactly. A yellow string might track gold, a white string might track silver or, peace offerings. These quipus were read by highly trained specialists called kupu kamayaks.
And to move this data across the mountains without the strings getting hopelessly tangled, they were carefully rolled up and carried by relay runners.
The chasquis. They sprinted along the cliffside roads.
Okay, so we have this localized, deeply cooperative society held together by string and reciprocity. How does that suddenly explode into a massive continent-spanning empire in the span of just like 50 to 80 years?
Well, it starts with a near-apocalyptic crisis.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 15th century, a fierce neighboring group called the Chunka invaded the valley of Cusco.
And the situation was dire.
So dire that the Inca king at the time, Viracocha, was terrified. He actually fled the capital, leaving the city to be destroyed.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because a younger son, Yupanqui, who wasn't supposed to be king, refuses to run.
Right, he stays behind.
He rallies the remaining defenders and, against all odds, miraculously repels the Chanca invaders. He takes the throne and gives himself a new name, Pachacuti.
Which translates to Earthshaker, or he who overturns space and time.
What a name!
And Pachacuti fundamentally changed the Andean world. He was a military genius, but he realized that to build an empire that actually lasts, conquest isn't enough. You have to assimilate the people you defeat.
The sources show this brilliant, pragmatic approach to foreign religions. Pachacuti wasn't just a brutal warlord.
No, he was a brilliant assimilator.
When the Inca conquered a new territory, they didn't burn the local temples or declare the local gods false. They simply absorbed them into the Inca pantheon.
There's this incredible story about the Huarochiri people. They claimed their local god, Macahuisa, wiped out a bunch of rebels with a massive mudslide.
Right, and instead of suppressing that belief, the Inca administrators basically said, wow, a mudslide god, that sounds highly useful. He is officially an Inca god now, and we are assigning him 50 full-time retainers.
It was a masterclass in political strategy. You validate the conquered people's culture while seamlessly subordinating them to the Inca state.
Awesome.
Exactly. But to physically hold together an empire made of dozens of assimilated tribes, Pachacuti knew he needed to project undeniable permanent power. And he did that through infrastructure.
Which brings us back to those stones. Let's look at Sacsayhuaman, the massive fortress complex above the capital of Cusco.
Oh, the ashlar masonry there is incredible.
We are talking about intricately carved white granite stones weighing up to 200 tons. For context, that is 100 times heavier than the average stone used to build the Great Pyramid of Giza.
It's massive.
And they moved them up a mountain without wheels or iron tools.
And they fit them together so perfectly that you literally cannot slide a pin between the joints.
Oh.
All without using a single drop of mortar.
Why go through that unbelievable painstaking effort? Like, why not just use smaller rocks and mortar like the Europeans did?
Well, it all comes back to surviving the Ring of Fire. This style of building is an ingenious mechanical adaptation for earthquakes.
Because if you build a rigid wall and glue it together with mortar...
the kinetic energy of an earthquake will just crack the mortar and bring the whole wall down.
Right.
But the Inca stones are cut into complex polygonal shapes that lean slightly inward. They interlock like a massive 3D jigsaw puzzle.
And when the earth shakes...
the lack of mortar allows the stones to literally dance. They rattle and slide, absorbing the seismic energy, and when the shaking stops, gravity pulls them right back into their perfect interlocking positions.
That is just staggering engineering. And they applied that same mechanical brilliance to agriculture, like the ruins of Moray.
Moray is fascinating.
It looks like a giant circular Roman amphitheater carved deep into the earth, but it was actually a high-tech bioengineering lab.
Yes. Because these circular terraces descend about 30 meters into the ground, they manipulate the wind patterns and solar heat absorption. The result is a stunning 15 degrees Celsius temperature difference from the top terrace down to the bottom one.
By doing that, they basically built a giant open-air climate simulator. This is how they solved food security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By moving plants up and down those specific terrace levels, they could crossbreed and test crops to see what would survive at different altitudes across the empire.
It's how they managed to cultivate over 1,000 different varieties of potatoes and 150 varieties of maize. Modern scientists are constantly trying to engineer climate-resilient crops, and the Inca were doing it 500 years ago using just rocks, dirt, and thermodynamics.
But as much as they engineered the physical earth, they believed they were just mirroring the cosmic order. Their worldview, their cosmology, the Pacha, was divided into 3 interconnected realms.
Break those realms down for us, because it really dictates everything they built.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have Hanan Pacha, the upper world of the sun, the stars, and the future. That was symbolized by the condor.
Okay.
Then you have K Pacha, the middle world of humans and the physical earth, symbolized by the puma.
Which is why Pachacuti completely redesigned the physical layout of Cusco so that from above, the city boundaries actually formed the shape of a puma.
Exactly. And finally, you have Ukupacha, the underworld, or inner earth, symbolized by the snake. Now, this wasn't a hellish place. It was the realm of the ancestors and the seeds waiting to sprout.
Everything the Inca did was an attempt to maintain a delicate reciprocal balance between these 3 worlds.
Right. And that desire for balance is so clear in their astronomy. When Western cultures look at the night sky, we look at the bright stars and play connect the dots to make shapes.
But the Inca were different.
They did look at stars, but they also focused on the dark patches of interstellar dust in the Milky Way.
They saw the Milky Way as a massive celestial river, right? Mayu.
Yeah, that mirrored the rivers on Earth. And those dark dust clouds formed the silhouettes of cosmic animals. The most vital one was Yakana, the mother llama.
Because the mother llama's physical position in the night sky directly dictated the agricultural cycle.
Exactly.
When she appeared, it told them exactly when to plant and when to harvest. They were tying their earthly survival to the movement of the stars. And the monuments weren't just buildings, they were huacas, living sacred entities.
Right, like the Antiquitanas.
Yes, which literally translates to hitching posts of the sun. During the winter solstice, when the days were at their absolute shortest and they feared the sun might abandon them, priests would ritually tie the sun to these carved stones to ensure it would return to warm the earth.
It is a society profoundly obsessed with cosmic balance, which makes the next chapter of this history all the more tragic.
Yeah, it really does.
Because a civilization perfectly adapted to its environment is about to face the ultimate out-of-context disaster.
It's the early 1500s. The powerful emperor Huayna Capac is fighting a difficult campaign in the northern jungles. Suddenly, he is struck by a mysterious, horrifying fever.
It was smallpox.
It spreads like wildfire, killing him, killing his chosen heir, and utterly devastating the army.
And what's crucial to understand about the mechanism of this plague is that it traveled down native trade routes long before the Spanish themselves physically set foot in the Andes.
The indigenous population had absolutely zero biological immunity. The sources describe a true apocalypse, bodies piling up in the streets of Cusco.
And because the emperor and his immediate heir both died so suddenly, the political structure completely collapsed, creating a massive power vacuum.
The empire fractured into a brutal civil war. On one side, you have Huáscar, the traditional heir backed by the elites in the capital. On the other side, you have Atahualpa.
Right, the battle-hardened prince commanding the veteran imperial armies up in the north.
Atahualpa ultimately wins the war, but the victory is totally hollow. The empire is bleeding. Up to half the population is dead from disease, the military is exhausted, and the social fabric is completely torn.
And it is at this exact, incredibly fragile moment in 1532 that Francisco Pizarro arrives.
Pizarro marches into the Andes with just 168 men, steel swords, horses, and firearms. They arrange a meeting with Atahualpa in the plaza of Catamarca.
Atahualpa enters the plaza unarmed with his retinue.
And the Spanish ambush him. They slaughter his guards with cannon and cavalry charges and take the emperor hostage. Now wait, I need to stop here and actively push back on the map.
Okay, sure.
Because the traditional narrative we always hear just doesn't make logical sense. We are always taught this myth that a few dozen heroic Europeans managed to topple an empire of millions purely because of superior intellect and steel weapons.
Right, the myth of the 168 men.
But looking at the sources, that's not the whole story, is it? Even with horses, you don't conquer millions of people with 100 guys. What is the history actually missing here?
That is a vital question, and you're right to push back. The math doesn't work because it's a vast oversimplification. Yes, the shock of steel and firearms was real, but Pizarro did not conquer the Andes with 168 men.
Because they walked into a post-apocalyptic landscape?
Exactly. They exploited the devastation of smallpox and the deep resentments left over from the Civil War. Pizarro quickly realized that many of the tribes the Inca had recently conquered harbored intense hatred for Cusco.
Like the Cañari and the Honca.
Yes. The Spanish promised them liberation from the Mita taxes and independence, so tens of thousands of indigenous warriors allied with the Spanish.
They provided the actual manpower, the intelligence, and the logistics needed to dismantle the remaining Inca forces.
Without those indigenous allies, the Spanish would have been wiped out.
It's devastating. And while holding Atahualpa hostage, the Spanish demand a ransom. Atahualpa offers something unfathomable to try and save his people. He promises to fill a room 22 feet long and 17 feet wide with solid gold, up to a height of 8 feet.
And then to fill it twice over with silver.
And he actually delivers. Sacred temples are stripped bare. Beautiful statues, which the Inca considered the tears of the sun, are hauled to Catamarca.
And the Spanish take this priceless, irreplaceable cultural heritage and just melt it down into generic ingots to ship back to Europe.
And then, despite receiving the largest ransom in human history, they put Atahualpa on a sham trial and execute him anyway.
It was a brutal betrayal.
The indigenous people were then forced into horrific colonial labor. The most notorious example being the Potosi silver mines, where the conditions were so bad that one Spanish missionary literally described the mine as the mouth of hell.
The political head of the empire was severed, the wealth was drained, and the population was enslaved.
But the body refused to die. The Spanish set up a puppet king, Manco Inca, assuming he would just keep the people pacified.
But Manco quickly realizes the Spanish have absolutely no intention of sharing power. So he escapes.
He uses the remnants of the Inca road system to secretly call his loyalists. He raises a massive army of over 100,000 warriors and returns to lay siege to Cusco, almost driving the Spanish out completely.
The siege lasts for nearly a year. Ultimately, Spanish reinforcements and the undeniable demands of the agricultural cycle, his warriors literally had to go home to plant crops so their families wouldn't starve, forced Manco to retreat.
But he doesn't surrender. He retreats deep into the impenetrable cloud forests of Vilcabamba and establishes the Neo-Inca state,
where a guerrilla resistance survived for nearly 40 years until the execution of Tupac Amaru in 1572.
So what does this all mean? The political entity known as the Inca Empire fell, but the culture?
The culture never vanished. Today, millions of people across the Andes still speak Quechua, the language of the Inca.
They still farm those same climate-simulating terraces.
And the principles of Ani, that sacred reciprocity of today for you, tomorrow for me, are still the absolute foundation of rural communities.
Which is an incredible testament to their resilience.
And this raises an important question regarding how we view history, particularly through the Andean concept of time.
Right.
The Andean people view time not as a straight, linear line that simply ends, but as cyclical. They have a concept called Pachacuti.
Like the emperor who overturns space and time.
Exactly. It means a cosmic turning over of the world. Modern Andean people don't just view the Spanish conquest as a permanent final defeat. Instead, they view it as a Pachacuti, a period of profound cosmic disorder where the world was turned upside down.
And the current cultural reawakening.
The reclaiming of indigenous languages and political power in the Andes today is seen as the cycle continuing. The world is slowly turning back right side up to its proper balance.
To look at history not as a book that snaps shut, but as a vast wheel that is constantly turning back toward balance.
It's a powerful worldview.
For you listening, we've gone from the freezing peaks of the Andes, where early humans learned to coax potatoes from bare rock, to the dizzying heights of Machu Picchu and the bloody plazas of the conquest.
A truly epic journey.
And the Inca proved that true human resilience doesn't necessarily come from unlocking the wheel or the written word. It comes from community, from reciprocity, from taking a landscape that actively wants to kill you and figuring out how to turn it into a garden.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over or explore on your own. Remember how we talked about the Andean stages of life, how the elderly were deeply respected because they were stepping closer to the Ukupacha, the inner earth?
Where they return to become seeds.
Exactly. In their worldview, the dead don't just disappear into the sky. They return to the earth to become seeds for the next generation. There is a very popular modern indigenous saying that perfectly captures this enduring spirit. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds.
That is just beautiful.
If time is truly cyclical like the Inca believed, then perhaps the Inca Empire didn't fall at all. Perhaps it just planted itself deep in the earth, and we are only just now watching it sprout again. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep